Hello, everyone. My name is Carl, and today I'll be talking about Astral Chain. And I've also got a new camera, so hopefully the video will look a lot less grainy. In any case, Astral Chain was developed by PlatinumGames and published by Nintendo for the Switch exclusively on August 30th, 2019. It'll run you $59.99 and is rated T for teen for drug references, language, use of alcohol, and violence. This has no sequels, no prequels. It is an original standalone game. The game takes place in a world that is under attack by a species of alien called Chimera that is invading from a parallel universe, another dimension. And you are the newest member of a police force, and conveniently, the only one that can use a legion, which is a Chimera under your control. So you are the only one that can fight the Chimeras. So that's what the game is about, fighting off this extra dimensional threat. Uh, the reason I picked this game up, kind of surprisingly, is not really because of any recommendations or not whatnot. I literally saw like the first trailer in a Nintendo Direct or at E3 or something, and I thought like, wow, that looks really slick. That looks really cool. And I'd heard things about like other projects PlatinumGames had made, Bayonetta, Wonderful 101. And so I was like, okay, maybe I'll check it out. It looks nice, and that's why I did. And fun fact, this game is actually the reason why I wanted to start reviewing things. I just kind of had a lot to say in the moment. Granted, I killer procrastinated and did not review it right after I played it. I never thought I'd be doing retrospective reviews, but yeah, kind of why I started this channel, interestingly enough. So, without further ado, let's dive into the gameplay. So, the gameplay is split up into two sections. Uh, Usually at the start of a chapter, you'll do detective work. You'll run around to kind of find out what's going on, what's the deal, talk to people, maybe do side quests, figure out who's committing crimes, blah, 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 blah. And then there's also the fighting section. And the fighting section is a hack and slash gameplay thing where you work with your legion to fight aberrations and chimeras and stop those who would seek to do harm or bring ruin to the Ark, which is where it takes place. Um, the detect In general, excuse me, the gameplay is also divided into chapters, where each section, you have like maybe detective work, then a combat section. Depends on which chapter is what. And then you'll get graded at the end, and then you go back to base where you um, can upgrade your stuff, buy items, all that good stuff, and then you're ready to go out on the next chapter. And you can go back and replay through each chapter. So luckily, it's not one of those linear story games where once you get from here to here, you can never experience that section again. You're free to go back and play them. The detective work itself was actually pretty fun. It wasn't too boring. I think one of the things that boosts how interesting it is just like the world you're running around in. The Ark is a very atmospheric place, and I'll get into this more into the story and art style sections later, but it makes you feel kind of like a cool hard-boiled detective where you're running around, you're talking to people, you're getting answers, you're figuring out who's doing evil, all that good stuff. So surprisingly good there. The fighting is also good, but it is very frustrating. And here's really what made me want to talk about this game. Just kind of breaking down how the fighting works. So, as kind of the marketing states, I mean, it says right in the back, dual action combat, two bodies fight with a single mind. We are Legion, blah 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 blah. So the whole marketing is that you get to pick between one of these people, and your Legion are fighting by both controlled by you. Now, the problem with that is that you only have one brain. So controlling two different characters at the same time can get really difficult. Right? And what's frustrating about this concept is that I don't know how good and how deep the combat is because I never felt like I mastered it. Even though I beat the entire game in full, I never felt like I got anywhere close to mastering everything. I just kind of took some basic combat tips and combat techniques that they taught me early on, and I just kind of applied those throughout the entire game. So there could be like I could be playing the game completely below what like a level at which I should, like not dealing as much damage, not finishing things as quick as I should, but I have no way of knowing because I don't know if I've mastered the combat system. Right. So going into the nitty-gritty, it's you and you're tied to the Legion with your Astral Chain. The Legion fights on its own normally, but there are different things you can do to direct it and sometimes directly control it. You can hold down a button and move it around, so to attack with it. So it turns like the C stick into controlling the Legion. So you can do things like run around an enemy and then wrap them up in the chain and then tie them up so you can attack them. You can also, if an enemy's charging at you, run to the side and then clothesline it. You can do stuff like that. So that when you pull those things off, it is really cool because you feel like you're so much more effective at it because you can stand in one place and then have the Legion run around. But the Legion's got to run all the way around. Or you can move too, and then the Legion and you can go whoop and then meet on the other side and tie them up twice as fast. So when you pull things off like that, it's awesome. But getting into your head, okay, in the heat of battle, I gotta hold the R button, move the C stick around, and I gotta move my stick around so that I can tie this guy up. It's really tough getting your head around it, and it kind of encourages you to just say screw it, play it safe, stand back, and just have your Legion move around. So that's kind of it's like you do get rewarded for digging in deeper to the combat system, but the big problem is it's so unintuitive sometimes that I didn't want to like and sometimes it just spikes the difficulty up ridiculous amounts. There was one where an enemy would send a wall at you to push you off the platform, and there was a weak point in the wall, but the weak point is facing a certain direction. So you have to get out your sword Legion and you have to press a button to enter into slash mode, and then you have to use the left stick to move the angle and the right stick to move the camera to make sure you're facing the right way, and then press a different button to slash. And you have to do that all of that in like 2 seconds. So I would be like, okay, click the button, and then trying to figure out what like the direction means that I'm pressing. And then I get pushed off, and it's like, okay, well that sucks. And I never figured out how to do that because I just kind of powered through. I took the hit, whatever, you know. And it's like I'm sure that that would come very like smoothly and naturally with some practice. But the problem is you're never given that practice. There is a tutorial and it does teach you like basic things, but it doesn't ramp up the hard advanced skills to make it so that you can actually do them with any sort of efficiency. And that's the big thing that I have frustrating about that game and about this game. And that's why I wanted to talk about it because it's a game that like I see a lot of potential and like I see a thing that says two bodies fight with one mind. And my immediate thought is, okay, that's either going to be really bad because you just can't pull it off, and the game will expect way too much of you, or it's going to be really good because they're somehow going to find a way to intuitively teach you how to control two characters at once, two completely different characters, and that'll be awesome. And somehow Astral Chain managed to split that like right down the middle. It's still fun to play, and there's a little bit that you can get away with. However, it doesn't work all the way. It's only a little bit. So, yeah, it's just kind of weird. That's why I wanted to talk about it because it somehow splits this difference that I didn't think it would. Um, yeah, overall though, like the action is really immersive. It is fun. I mean, who doesn't love a good like hack and slash type combat? You do feel really cool when you're fighting these enemies, and the atmosphere helps with that. Um, but yeah, I just feel like I was missing out on so much because I simply didn't have enough practice at all this. But yeah, so gameplay said and done, onto the story. The strongest part of the story, I don't think, is the overlying story itself that you progress through. Sorry, in the game. Rather, it is the ambiance, the setting in which the game takes place, how it feels to be there. Because, like I mentioned before, it takes place in like I think our normal Earth, and all of a sudden it is invaded by chimeras, right? These extra dimensional aliens all of a sudden out of nowhere, they invade the place, they start infecting the place, people start turning into aberrations because they're infected. So because of this, all the governments of the world work together to build this mega city ship thing called the Ark, which is where everybody that survives and has gotten off the mainland now lives, and the chimeras are trying to take over this arc as well to kind of conquer the whole planet, presumably. Now, you take place as one of two twins. It's kind of interesting. At the start of the game, you get to pick whether you want to be the male twin or the female twin, and whichever one you pick, the other one is named Akira, and they are another character in the story. So like um so like okay, I could pick the guy, and the female is called Akidai. And but if I pick the girl, the guy would be called Akidai. And then that you would each would the story I believe is like the exact same, doesn't matter which one you pick, but it's kind of interesting how both are characters and it doesn't just throw one away. It just depends on yeah, who is who. So, um the story itself is not that engaging, not that thrilling. I think, and it's kind of standard affair of like, you know, earth-shattering things happen. There's a part where you're ousted as a traitor. I'm like, what is this Pokemon Mystery Dungeon? Like, the classic stuff. There's like this twist coming at the end that I saw a mile away because it's just like I have no idea why this guy would betray us, but he smells like betrayal, from a million miles away. So like I know he's going to be, something's going to happen, and lo and behold, it happens. So um, overall, like what I really wanted was to see more of this world that they created. I wanted to explore more. That's why I like the detective section so much because you could see like and talk to people, and see what's going on in this world. And thematically, I think they did a really good job of like you have this mega city. It's the Ark. It's kind of like this touted as this paradise. You'd think everybody would be more or less in solidarity against this alien threat. You'd think everybody would be on the same level of socioeconomic status, but no. Turns out that even when the entirety of humanity is pushed to the brink, you still have slums and mega malls, and you still have very rich people that are high and mighty, and you have people living in shacks. And it's kind of interesting how even though they literally restarted the world from scratch, they made this arc from the ground up, there's still poverty. There's still people sitting on their ivory towers while other people are, eating out of tin cans warmed over an open fire. It's just kind of interesting how it doesn't necessarily beat you over the head with it by saying like, oh wow, this is the class divide or what, like anything silly like that. But it just kind of presents the world as like this how it would be. I don't know. I I really like that about it. Graphics, art style, graphics very striking. Like I mentioned at the start, the look of the game and how kind of like shiny and like particle effects are everywhere. Um, and how flashy it looks. That's what drew me to the game, which I knew, you know, that's not the best way. Judge a book you by its cover. That's not the best way. You gotta back it up by gameplay. But I think the game design, like the game art style, the game's art style in this case, really helps kind of add to the experience of um adds to the experience of the game because like I was mentioning with the themes before, there is this class divide, and that some people like you are have this like shiny police uniform, and you got walkie-talkies, and you got this fancy gadget that lets you control chimeras, and other people are kind of dressed in dingy, raggedy clothes. And not only is this kind of shiny aesthetic visually striking, it also serves this thematic purpose. And over everything, even in like broad daylight, it feels like there's this oppressive darkness over the entire game. So you really kind of feel like even though some people are trying to go about their days, you know, as normal as they could be, while, you know, given the circumstances, given the circumstances, you know, at any time, given that they're from a parallel dimension or another dimension, at any time a rift could open up and chimeras could run through. And the technology to help fight them is still very much in its early phases of development. So you could just be screwed, if you're going and shopping at the mall and all of a sudden a chimera shows up and decides it wants to eat you, like you're dead. And the art style really kind of has this like kind of oppressive darkness feel, this grungy oppressive feel, like even with the shiny mall that I keep talking about, because a mall is like a big one of the big locations of the game. It's shiny, it's fancy, it's whatever, but it still feels dark. It feels wrong because there's this looming threat. But yeah, so really, really great stuff here, in my opinion. Music wise, I always say I'm not a music guy. I don't remember a lot of the music. I remember a lot of it being very like muted in the background, detective work. Maybe you're running around and monsters haven't struck yet, so it's kind of like, little bits. And I remember liking that. I think there was a really over the top like electric guitar vocals thing when you get like a superpower up later in the game, and I want to say that was like on the edge of like genuinely enjoying and like ironically this is kind of silly enjoying. But other than that, yeah, there was also voice acting, which was fine. You yourself are a silent protagonist, but your twin isn't. Interesting. Um, no DLC, so nothing to talk about DLC here, not that I know of. But yeah, without further ado, let's go to the conclusion. Astral Chain, its presentation is definitely its strongest point, as you probably gathered from this review. The world, how it looks, how you run through it, it's all extremely intriguing. And if you're a fan of like this fantasy, sci-fi, cyberpunk type world, and like diving into another fantasy world where, kind of the writers have to imagine what would it look like if we were invaded by extra-dimensional aliens and we built an ark to as a stronghold. You know, this is a great game for that if that's your thing. The combat and detective work, while both engaging, the combat itself is very frustrating in that it is so complicated. I sometimes feel like they didn't even play test it almost. Like, I don't know how they could make it any easier necessarily. I think they just have the concept of trying to control two characters at once is just inherently over ambitious. But yeah, I don't know. I just wish they streamlined it a bit. Even a hard game like Monster Hunter, where it's really complicated, kind of lets you eases you in until you mastered all the things. And this didn't do that. This could really benefit from a better tutorial. Um, the story itself is all right. Personally, I felt could have been better, could have been a little more nuanced and less obvious. So for now, I'll give it a 7. It is definitely a decent game to be sure. I would recommend it. But I'm struggling with whether I should bump it up to an 8. I'll keep it at a 7 for now, but I think if I played through it again and really dove into it and tried like going through and getting it to 100%, I'd be able to definitively decide, okay, this is an 8. And who knows, maybe I'm missing something that like, oh, if you play through it all the way, it's awesome. So right now, I'm comfortable with keeping the 7. Yes, I hope you found this review engaging, and I hope you enjoyed the new camera, the new resolution. Uh, if you thought you had, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, if you think I am right on the money, if you think I'm an idiot, feel free to let me know in the comments down below. I read all my comments, but other than that, I'll see you next time, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.